All right, thank you very much, Elise. Now, in our fast-paced, high-tech world, one can easily be overwhelmed by never-ending emails, too many texts and phones that don't stop ringing. But in a society where your work and social life is so dependent on electronic communication, when do you know enough is enough? And how can you remove yourself from the digital world? Well, here to teach us how to manage our digital overwhelm is professional organizer Colette Robichaud. And Colette, first of all, thanks so much for coming in this morning. So, how do we know that we're overwhelmed?
Well, I guess today most people are telling me that they're feeling overwhelmed. Most of us, if we have technology at all, it's really affecting us a little bit. There's so many different electronic devices that really do affect us.
So how do we go about managing our, digital life?
Well, I say sort of start in the bedroom. Like, that's a core foundation, how we get to bed and how much sleep. And there's a real movement now to de-digitaltize that bedroom. So I always suggest starting with little bites, but people are saying about getting all those electronic devices out, going back to an old style, sort of alarm clock, and, let's use the bedroom to recharge instead of recharging our devices. So maybe, actually reading the real way instead of maybe from electronic device.
Right.
Yeah. So we know that light, even a little bit, can affect our circadian rhythm. And even if you're measuring and thinking I'm getting the same time of sleep, we're seeing the quality of sleep is really diminished.
Now, of course, a lot of people do work with, like their phones a lot out of the office, whatever. How can you kind of take a break from that?
Well, set up some boundaries instead of it being sort of always on and having that controlling us. And sometimes it's good to just use a timer and say, I'm going to work on my project for a certain amount of time and then go to email, or say I'm going to check email at the top of the hour. And again, that's totally dependent on what your occupation is. If you're an ambulance driver, you're not going to say, I'm going to wait 2 hours and work on something else.
No.
But for a lot of us, that's not the type of work we're in, but we're making ourselves feel like that and feel that sort of stress.
Now, that brings up a good point. So with all this digital technology and the overwhelm from it, what effect does that have on our health?
Well, we're acting as if we're running away from the dinosaur. Do you know what I mean? It's that constant stress that we're feeling like, we've got to do things immediately. So we're turning everything into urgent. And the other thing that we know is it does give us a bit of an energy boost checking Facebook or our email. It's a bit like they call it a dopamine squirt, a bit like that slot machine. So it can energize us, but at the same time, if we're constantly using up all that sort of emergency sort of energy, that's depleting as well. We weren't meant to run from the dinosaur constantly every day, and that's the effect it's having on us, included with that lack of sleep, with getting us off track a little bit.
Now, what about those, like, for me, my work phone is also sort of my personal phone, so even when I'm at home, I can still access work. Should I try not to do that?
I think it's a good idea to untether us a little bit, and most of us, our lives today are intertwined. But we want to really reevaluate those connections. We are geared to connect as people, but do we need to connect with 3,000 friends? Who are really our friends? And let's get back to some real FaceTime with that, or picking up the phone, because we're prone to not even look over the cubicle to say, hey, I need to talk to you.
Right.
It's a text. So let's get back into the present and more real time, and I think that's going to help us all a little bit more.
I've seen that firsthand with my kids having friends in the car, and nobody's saying anything, and they're texting one another.
It's true, but as adults, a lot of us are moving towards that in the office, or even with our friends, instead of getting together for a cup of coffee, let's bring some of that real time back, and I think it's going to serve us all well. And if you can get out in nature and go for a walk and really get out of that sort of scenario as well, it's going to make us feel a lot less stressed also.
All right, so if there's one key tip that we should leave the viewers with, what do you think it is? Just take a break?
Be intentional. Put yourself in charge. So take a moment and think. We have little time to reflect and quiet time. So be mindful, have a little bit of a break, and then set some boundaries instead of feeling so tied to that. I'd also say contact a professional organizer. We're all across the country. You can visit our directory on organizersincanada.com, and we're educated to help you set some little goals and work along to help us, because it's not easy. And, it seems like we just elevate and more and feel more and more overwhelmed.
Not going to lie, Colette, I could use a little help.
I know, okay? Well, I'm there for you, Cyril.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll see you back here with a whole lot more CTV Morning Live. But if you need to connect with us, you certainly can in a variety of ways. You can hit us through Twitter at CTV Morning ATL, Facebook CTV Atlantic Morning, or email us at cml@bellmedia.ca. Or just give us a break, right, Colette?
Absolutely.